You're listening to a DM podcast.
Well, welcome back to the Betoota Advocate Radio Show, broadcasting live across the Diamantina, but also right around the country on the podcast service. You're joined by myself, Clancy Overall, and Wendell Hussey in the booth today.
Yes, great to be here, Clancy, yeah.
It's exciting. This is an exciting guest, especially, to kick the year off, I guess. This is our first one back. Oh, no.
Second one back.
Second one back. We had the
talk
hottest
about
100 countdown expert in last week. Weekly interviews are back, and today's guest is a success story from Western Queensland. And there's plenty of them. I'm not going to say it's a rare thing. This one is a pretty special yarn that we're going to have today. When you think of Western Queensland success stories, it's easy to kind of turn your mind to Kurt Catewell, Artie Beetson, Darren Lockyer. But, we also, the guy who played Alf in Home and Away, Western Queensland man. Who's that actor from Winton who is in all the stuff now? I mean, we could just keep going. Jason Clark, incredible Australian actor. We've got plenty going on out this part of the world. We've got the Betoota Advocate. We've got Qantas, formerly known as an Australian-owned airline. And we've got a whole range of different political movements that have changed Australian life for the better, be that the Old Country Party or the National Party or the Labor Party. It's all come out of Western Queensland, the engine room of this country, and today's guest joins that illustrious alumni. Thank you for joining us, Ed Ross.
Pleasure, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
Now, mate, whether our listeners know it or not, they've seen your influence on this country in some capacity, I dare say. Well, you came into our view with your TradeMutt workwear, which is a visionary idea you've got. But I kind of want to talk about, you're doing a lot of things in the space of, mental health, which we'll get into. But I want to kind of talk about, you as a mental health advocate. How do you get into that, and where did it all start for you? Tell us your yarn.
Yeah, well, it's a funny one, Clancy. I mean, myself and Dan, my co-founder and best mate, who launched TradeMutt. It's funny, we don't even call ourselves mental health advocates. We just call ourselves a couple of dickheads having a go, to be honest. We're just trying to change the culture around help-seeking behaviour and allow people to start conversations about mental health more regularly. Sadly, Dan lost a close mate to suicide at the end of 2015. I was working in the Territory for a few years out of school. Sort of got jack of it, sleeping in swags every night and being out in dusty stock camps. And I'd actually lost a mate in a helicopter accident around Easter time, and sort of made me reevaluate things and what I was doing with my life. And I wanted to be closer to mates. And I came down for the Ekka of all things, and had a rip tear of a time there. Yep.
Got on the mechanical bull at the Jubilee Hotel, no doubt.
Mate, absolutely. When it was going well too, the Jube. She's had a Renault. It's not like the glory years, sadly.
Bit sterile nowadays.
Yeah, it's a bit 2024.
Yeah.
But mates came down, had a really good time with some mates, and just realised that being closer to mates was something that I valued and wanted to be getting around. So put my 2 weeks notice in when I got back out west, and basically came down and was just doing labouring jobs. Just couldn't get a start in anything really, just doing labouring jobs, going to Fridays every weekend and tearing through cash. And got to the point where just by chance, a mate of mine was at a 21st, and really weird situation where a mate of his had got a pocket doll from his ex-boss. And he rang him back and he said, got a missed call. He said, mate, just pocket doll, sorry, but are you still looking for an apprenticeship? And he said, oh, no, I'm not at the moment, but I'll let you know if anyone is. And then somehow my mate Harry was at this party in Toowoomba, came back and said, Rossi, there's an opportunity for an apprenticeship in Brisbane. I said, mate, I'm not doing an apprenticeship. I'll wait and get a bank job or get into agri-sales or do something.
Yep.
And, lo and behold, started working with the same builder on the same day as Dan. He was a bloke from Western Sydney. He was already a licensed tradie, and we were the two new guys on the block, so we got lumped with all the shit jobs.
Yep.
And we're just working out a job
Yep.
in Kenmore, job in Kenmore, blackjacking retaining walls and putting insulation ceilings in.
Hanging doors.
Oh, mate, it was horrific. And I was sort of through the first month, I'm going, mate, fuck this, I'm quitting, moving back to the territory.
Yeah.
And Dan was like, no, they're testing us, mate. They're testing us, like, we'll stick with it. And, yeah, we just forged a really close relationship and good mateship and just talking, crap and watching, quoting Jim Carrey movies and Quentin Tarantino, as you do to get through the day.
Yep.
Got your wheelbarrow licenses together as well?
Yeah, mate. And as soon as you drop one full of mud, you owe a carton, so you get pretty good at hanging on to them.
Yep.
Especially on apprenticeship wages.
Yes.
And anyway, was just started doing a lot of cashies and stuff with Dan's on weekends, starting to pile a bit of cash together. And we had some ideas. We're like, what are we going to do? If we won the lotto or want to start a business? And one of the ideas was workwear. We're like, no one's really doing anything with workwear. It seems a bit boring and plain. And that was just an idea. And then, as I said earlier, Dan lost a mate just completely out of the blue to suicide at the end of 2015. And that was just our first experience directly and indirectly with an event like that.
So you say that you know your mate's kind of, he's away from home and he gets this news, so he's dealing with that kind of in a foreign place to a degree. You come from Western Sydney, you're working in Queensland as a tradie and in the heat, and you get awful news like that, and then you indirectly become his support network.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that kind of has informed the work you've gone on to do together.
Yeah, exactly. It was just sort of really weird for us because we've both fortunate enough to have been privately educated, and this whole mental health space is something we knew nothing about. Mm-hmm. And we're like, depression, anxiety, what is all this stuff, and why are so many young people, especially blokes, killing themselves? We just couldn't really work it out. And we already had the idea for the work shirts, and TradeMutt was born.
Where did that idea for the work shirts come from? Is it just to get people talking, to kind of get people to loosen up a little bit? How did that come about?
Yeah, well, we were just wanting to wear something a bit different to work anyway, something a bit funky, on a Friday, a bit more casual. And then we learned about what social enterprise was and profit for purpose. And we were like, well, fuck, we could possibly wrap these two ideas together and make some real change, start a business and try and make some impact in the mental health space. And we just ended up getting on the news and the whole thing blew up. And 6 years down the track, here we are. And they're just conversations starting work shirts, basically, as simple as that.
So for those not listening, they've got these wild patterns. There's a bit of camo, but it's all very vibrant. There's all kinds of patterns, but it's all PPE. I guess official, right?
Yeah, got high vis ones as well for mining and commercial sites, which is great.
So you've essentially created unofficial kind of mental health liaisons on work sites and mining sites and blue collar workplaces right around the country.
Exactly, yeah, and completely what we intended was, to sell a couple of shirts and start some conversations, and the worst thing was going to happen to us that we were going to get lumped with 30 grand's worth of work shirts and wear them for the rest of our lives from extra small to 3XL.
Yeah.
But it just exploded, and we've just been overwhelmed, to be honest, with the support that we've had, and the way it's just infiltrated workplaces and cultures are being changed within workplaces sort of, overnight, just people having conversations that they've never otherwise felt like having, but because they're wearing a cotton drill work shirt with a bit of funky colour on there and it's got some meaning behind it, people are opening up and being vulnerable and starting some really important conversations.
Sounds like you've basically got a bunch of ambassadors now all over the nation, just in the form of, as you said, tradies and truck drivers and nurses now as well. There's nurses kit who are just wearing this clothing and starting these conversations. Was there any kind of negative blowback at the start? I know particularly, there can be places where sometimes, so you don't want to stereotype, but some of the older blokes can be a little bit more uptight and not as open to new ideas and talking about those sorts of things. Did you see much of that, or was it pretty quick for people to adopt it?
It's interesting because that was a mindset that Dan and I had too. We're like, wow, how are we going to actually get people to jump on board with this? Because it was, 6-7 years ago, it was quite a taboo topic. The interesting thing was the older men and women were jumping on board because they either lost someone or knew someone that had lost someone and really wanted to make a difference, around people having these conversations and knew the importance of it. And so they were basically our main ambassadors. And the interesting thing as well, we've had interactions with people before that, have been a bit, oh, what's the go with that shirt, mate? Look, shit house, blah, blah, blah. And then you tell them what it's about. A conversation started about mental health, and all of a sudden that guard comes down and they just open straight up to you. It's an incredibly powerful thing that we had no foresight that it would do that. We just thought it'd be a bit of fun.
Yeah, I mean, the discourse, the discussion around tradies or, people in the bush, in certain communities, particularly men, bottling things up and being rather stoic has existed, for as long as you can remember in Australia. Why do you think it is? I mean, you both said you were lucky enough to go to boarding schools and whatever, and even there, in these educations that your parents were investing in, you didn't hear anything about it. Why wasn't there conversations?
And this is what we're trying to understand now, is that why it's not being ingrained in us in early education and just general overall community well-being. I don't know why people haven't been talking about it more regularly. I think we know now that it's a massive issue in this country, is people taking their lives. And we're just trying to change that culture and allow people to just simply start talking about things that are going on with them and seeking help. And we've just got to be able to seek that help, tell mates about it, and allow other people to know it's easy to do, and it's really rewarding once you've done that.
And a big part of this is you started TradeMutt, and then the branding on that is this is a conversation starter, which from that flowed TIACS, the mental health organisation, because that's the next step, right? Is you start the conversation, you start talking about it, but there is only so much your mate can do sometimes. So you have to take it to someone who can help you out, and that's what TIACS does, right? That's the next step with free counselling and mental health support.
Yeah, exactly. So sort of after we'd launched TradeMutt, we were getting a lot of feedback from our community saying, hey, I'm having a conversation with someone, where do I go? I need more help. And Dan and I, again, looked at it and we were like, well, there's crisis support services out there, which is great, and they're really needed. But people weren't in crisis. They just needed someone to talk to and sort of like a coach or someone to support them along their journey. And for Dan and I, even going through the stresses of starting a small business, we needed support ourselves. So we went on that journey to figure out how we would do that. And it's seeing a GP, booking in, attending, paying for that, getting on a mental health plan, then finding a counsellor or a psychologist, booking in and seeing those people. And it was just like an arduous task. Like, why is it so hard to speak to like a mental health professional? So we just said, fuck, why don't we just get a phone number, hire someone, pay them, and then just get people to call? Which is a pretty loose idea in hindsight, because I remember when we rang up to get the insurance, they asked for what our accreditations and qualifications were. When we said Cert 3 in carpentry and joinery, they dropped the phone. But I mean, I think that us being so naive sort of helped us, sort of break through. So the TIACS service was just to remove those physical and financial barriers that have previously existed for people to access a counsellor. And the thing that TIACS does differently is you speak to the same counsellor through your journey. So sadly, Dan and I can't use TIACS because, if we're ringing them up with our problems, they know we're in strife. Yeah. So we've got our own psychologists, and I saw my psych ender last year, and like I've been saying to people, I'm like, he was bringing stuff up that we'd been talking about 18 months previously, and that's a really cool thing about TIACS, is that you speak to that same counsellor, so you're not repeating your story over and over again. Like, we're taking people from point A of I need help to point B, I'm feeling better and have the tools in the kit to look after myself.
I mean, there's always the attitude of like, some sort of oil change or, checking the oil, which is obviously an easier way to communicate these kind of visits to certain professionals, particularly for blokes. What have you found though, you're talking about solutions, which are obviously since the very first shirt you printed to now with your phone line, that's what you've been focused on. But are there, curative things that you start, or preventative things that you start seeing as well? Like, what has changed? Are things worse? Are there factors now? I mean, we often think about screen time and all these new different kind of lifestyle changes that have only really one generation has seen. Is that something you're across, and is that something you spend much time on, or is it more about just getting the help?
Yeah, I think, it comes down to people's individual journeys, to be honest. Like, for Dan and I, looking back now, like, our mental health and well-being, it's just been an absolute roller coaster ride through this journey as well. Like, people think that you work in the mental health space, you must have really great mental health. I can guarantee you that is not true. You're very much susceptible to the triggers and things of small business, like I said before, and managing staff and being in relationships. So what we've realised individually is that it's understanding what works for you. You know, some things work better for certain people and some things don't. So for me, my whole thing has just been about routine, getting in as much physical exercise. I go to the gym every morning, doing the whole wanker ice bath thing every morning as every other bloke.
Yeah, great for recovery, mate.
But and just simple things, like I haven't had social media on my phone for probably about 5 years, just LinkedIn. And also just spending time with friends and family is what works for me. And seeing my psychologist probably every quarter.
You know, as you said, 6 or so years ago, mental health, mental illness, these topics were a taboo, and they had been for centuries before that. You know, Australians were kind of better known for drinking and fighting and dealing with things in probably, unsustainable and antisocial ways. But, since blokes like you have come through, there's been a big push. But, there is that element, and Wendell touched on it earlier, about, there's only so far you can go with awareness. And how do you advise mates, when someone say, you've got to speak out, speak to a mate, speak to an ambassador, speak to an unofficial ambassador. When was it that you decided that you had to add another layer to this? Was the feedback kind of along the lines of, people telling you, mate, this is great, I've got people talking to me, I'm happy to be that person, but, I don't know what to tell this bloke about this. And then furthermore, how do you find someone that is appropriate to sit on the other end of the phone?
For us, it was just realising that there was a really big gap between, like you were saying, awareness and that crisis support. We just wanted to be able to fill that void for people. And even if we can't, as an organisation, support you, at least we can help get you in the right direction and point you in the right direction. So we're just recommending everyone, obviously, to give TIACS a call or text as that first port of call. And even one really important thing that we're pushing through is you don't need to be needing support yourself. You may be wanting to support someone else. You call TIACS, speak to professionals, so then you can go and talk to that person about it. I think that's a really important thing. Most people, and I think we've all been guilty of it, we know a mate or a family member or a loved one who we're like, you should really go and see someone. And what we're saying is you reach out first on behalf of, and then go and have a chat to them about how that process has been, so hopefully they can take that lead from you. And then the second question, Clancy, sorry, I forgot the second question.
Well, yeah, how do you find that right person to sit behind a phone? To deal with, blokes who've probably never, ever spoken about this ever before.
Yeah. Again, that's an interesting one. So for us, it's all our counsellors are masters qualified. Yep. And we've got quite a different model of care compared to private practice where we work quite collaboratively. Mm-hmm. So we've got a model of care that has been built with our counselling team. So rather than working in silos or individually, it's very much, hey, this is a client I've been working with. This is what we're working on. What do you guys think? And there's collaboration and stuff there. So for us, it's all about, finding people that fit our culture and that also can drop a C-bomb, drop an F-bomb on the phone. Yep. And most people, when you're sitting in an interview and you're saying, hey, look, we talk to blue-collar Australians, for us to be able to cut through, and we need to speak their language. And so if they drop a C or an F-bomb, feel free to throw it straight back. And the counselling team find it quite amusing and quite impactful once they're doing that, because they can hear the change of guard and the change of voice, from that truckie that's, on his way out to Birdsville somewhere and he's dropped an F-bomb with his counsellor's just dropped a C-bomb on the phone. And he goes, wow, this person's really speaking my language. So that's really what we're trying to maintain.
There's no room for pearl clutching on TIACS, is there?
No. Trying to be as relatable as we can.
Yeah. Oh, mate, well, it's an amazing thing you've done here. What's the number?
So it's 0488 469 88, and we're Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And like I said, you don't need to even be in the blue-collar rural space. Anyone can reach out to TIACS and understand how the service works and get some support.
And that's now for nurses as well, and you're focusing a lot on the bush as well?
Yeah, so we've got a really big campaign that we're launching in the next few weeks called the Don't Keep It Under Your Hat campaign. So the whole idea is to raise some awareness around the service we're providing and how people can gain access to TIACS. I think a big thing for us is not to plaster mental health or well-being or counselling. It's just, guys, ladies, what are you keeping under your hat? Let's have a yarn. Let's lift the hood a bit and speak some truths and not bottle it up. I think we've been doing that for too long. And for rural communities, we're here for them. And 15% of our calls are from rural and regional Australia. And it's something that we're really driven to increase the awareness of and get more people reaching out.
Yeah, fantastic. Because as Clancy was saying there, there can be 6 steps sometimes to actually getting to talk to someone. It's a lot harder in the bush sometimes as well to be able to get in for those appointments.
I want to talk about the bush. What are some of the other barriers out there, or indeed accelerators of the trouble that people are facing?
Yeah, well, one obviously is isolation. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people, a lot of single people living out on country Australia, and that isolation. I've had people call up. And the person they've been speaking to for the last month is their dog, you know what I mean? Or the postie that'll come through, on their weekly town run. And, it can be really tough. So what we're trying to do is just make it really easy for people to reach out whenever. So most people have Wi-Fi and stuff now at home, so they can just text through, to TIACS, which is really important. And I think the other thing as well is not the lack of resources. I wouldn't say that. I think it's just that it can be a little bit daunting, in those small towns to go in. There may only be one social worker or one counsellor in town, and, people see a ute parked out the front and people may feel that a bit intimidating. So what we're saying is reach out to us first, dip your toe in the water, know how good it is, and then if you want to reach out to people locally, feel free to do so.
I mean, I can only imagine the testimonials you're getting online and by letter, but are people bailing you up in the street about this?
Yeah, mate, it's sort of overwhelming, to be honest, where, like we said, like Dan and I just two dickheads having a go, mm-hmm. Like we just had this idea, and now it's far bigger than us and our team. It's the community in which we deliver to and are supporting. Yeah, you almost become numb to it to a degree, and you kind of need to be, because it just, for our own mental health and well-being, like it can just become overwhelming. And you hear those stories of people that have lost a loved one and lost a loved one recently that are in a tradie, a young tradie or something like that. And for us, it's like, fuck, how do we not get through to that person? But it's we've just got to keep working hard and fighting to change that culture and get more people involved with what we're doing.
Do you ever get hit up by, I guess you'd say, employers? Do you end up helping people with their systems as well?
Well, the big thing for us is just trying to bring, I suppose, teams together.
Yep.
One story that sort of stands out, Jason, our co-CEO at TIACS, he was talking to a board, I think it was last year. I was just telling everyone about, his story and what we're doing here at TIACS and whatnot. And then after he'd sort of shared his story, a couple of people in the board were sharing their story and whatnot. Sort of went on for an hour or so, and then Jason walked outside, and one of the blokes sort of hit him up and said, "Jace, I've known those blokes in there for 5-6 years. I've never heard that. Yeah. I've never heard they went through that or that they've suffered through that or they'd lost that person." And I think that the businesses that have been jumping on board and either rolling out TradeMutt shirts or supporting TIACS as an alliance partner are allowing those people to share those stories, mm-hmm. And build closer connections internally with team members, which, like you were sort of saying, when you're isolated on FIFO sites or out in stock camps, it's really important for us to have that compassion, empathy, and know people's story, I suppose.
A lot of stuff that you've spoken about and those kind of stories, it sounds like for so many people it is almost just like a dropping of the guard and an opening up and kind of feeling comfortable to talk about that sort of stuff. I noticed that you spoke about it in an interesting way as well. You basically ran through what sounded like a mental health plan. You're very open and upfront about it. And it sounds like you have a great lens that you look through in terms of mental health. How much has that changed? And was there a moment for you where you just it crystallised in your head what it was all about?
Yeah, I suppose it's just been a bit of an evolution and a journey. I suppose for me personally, it's when you're going through, whether or not it's, financial stress with the business or staffing issues or marital issues or whatever it is, it's, I can't work this out myself. And my mates, whoever I'm talking to, what they're telling me isn't really, not that it's not helping me, but it's not helping solve anything either. So maybe I do need to speak to someone professionally. And then what we've realised is once we've gone and done that and had a really good experience, because I've been to different counsellors and stuff through the last couple of years and they didn't gel, but I finally found a psych that really challenged me. I think that was someone that I was like, fuck, this bloke's, jamming me here a bit. Yeah. I was like, this is good. So that's been great. And then it's being able to know how good that is for me, and then going and telling my mates about it. So like me and my wife going and getting marriage counselling, told a mate at a wedding out in Gundy last year. And he's like, how was that? I was like, mate, it's the best thing we've ever done. It's fantastic. He's like, oh shit, yeah, righto. And then 2 days later, he's calling me up. He's like, oh, what's the name of that psychologist you're seeing in Toowoomba? And so we've just realised that it's not about preaching and trying to, change the world. It's just do it yourself and tell people how it's been good for you. And then people follow you along. And like I said, I'm definitely not a mental health, advocate, mental health professional, anything like that. I'm just a bloke that's on my own journey, that's building a business with, my best mate, and changing the culture and just wanting people to reach out, get help, and then tell their mates about it. I think that's the way we're going to change the culture in this country because, we're all going through something, there's no doubt.
So, Ed, you spent a lot of time, for someone who was bouncing between working with cattle and sheep and working with tools and working on roofs, and then landing yourself in this kind of sector. I guess it's a sector. It's a space anyway. Let's put it that way. You spent a lot of time thinking about something you weren't really taught about. And do you feel like I'm asking about you? Do you feel like you've kind of opened some sort of Pandora's box in your fucking early 20s here that you just can't, it's something you never really, thought about, and then now you're just in and you're inside it and you're finding more and more out about, this very relevant aspect of health?
Yeah, I think so. I think now we're just, figuring out just the amount of personal development that you can make along the way. Because I think for me personally, like probably until I was 25, 6, you think you know everything. Mm-hmm. Your shit doesn't stink. Mm-hmm. If anyone gives you advice, you think they're mad, and you think you pretty much got everything figured out. Mm-hmm. Until that moment, you think, fuck, actually, I know nothing, but I'm really keen to learn as much as I can and improve. And I think that as a mindset shift has been a really big thing for me. Because I really had that hard exterior up, thinking that I wasn't not successful, but I wasn't, not good, but I wasn't doing well unless I looked like I knew what I was doing, Mm-hmm. So it was kind of putting up that bullshit facade. But being able to drop that down and just be like, actually, I know nothing, but I'm willing to learn and have a crack. Yeah, I find myself in this space now where I'm like, well, you can't pretend to be something you're not. Being genuine and transparent is one of our first values here at TradeMutt and TIACS. So it's like you got to, lead from the front and show people how to do it, and being able to come into the office and have a whole org meeting and, be in tears talking about something that's going on in your personal life makes a big difference for your staff to then say, fuck, if the boss or whatever can go through it and this is how they're handling it, well, I can do the same. So we're just trying to replicate that through the rest of the country.
There's something about young blokes, isn't there, when you start making a bit of money, and that obviously cements what you were just saying, that belief that you know everything and you're bulletproof. And then occasionally in a young person's life, there'll be like a lever that changes. There'll be a lever that you pull and you feel like a new man. Is that something you kind of talk about with young people as well? That idea that doing pingers every single weekend and drinking energy drinks every single meal, and not doing any exercise, and living the life you always dreamed of living, actually isn't that sustainable?
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone goes through it. It's just at a certain age. It's crazy what life brings up and what people go through. It's just a matter of when people are ready to switch over and really embrace it, I suppose. And it's different for everyone. And if there's someone out there that's thinking about that may be time, then it's time to reach out to a mate or give TIACS a call and start that now. Well,
I said before, you're doing great stuff here, Ed. Give us that number again and we'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, for sure. So TIACS is 04 888 469 88. Just give them a text or a call. If you just text them through and say, g'day, just heard Ed on the Betoota podcast, they'll get straight back to you and start having a yarn.
Terrific.
And there's plenty of support, obviously, on the website as well, and you can get all your gear at TradeMutt. Just wanted to ask you quickly as well, Ed, before we go, ice bath, what are you up to time-wise?
Well, mate, it's funny. I started off, nearly had it for a year at home, built it out of the chest freezer off Gumtree. Yeah. I was doing 3 minutes every morning, but I was just getting to a stage later in the year where I just kept getting a couple of chest infections. So I was like, cut it back to 2. Cut it back to 2. So yeah, I'm a 2 minute man every day now. So yeah, it is like, I mean, it is a wanker thing. I mean, everyone's doing it now, but it does get you going. It lights you up, that's for sure.
Mate, it's an ancient science. It's an ancient science. I know everyone's privy to it as well, you know. And you know, this is another element as well, wellness and you know, fitness and well-being, and these are all the things that these levers that people pull in their lives, and it's good to get on top of this stuff. So thanks, mate. Thank you for speaking to us. Thanks for sharing your story, and all power to you.
Yeah, really appreciate the opportunity, lads. It means a hell of a lot.
Thanks, Ed.